Yay!
All right.
Success. There's always this moment, right, when you press the button where you're like,
know.
is it
Is
gonna
this gonna happen?
Is it gonna load? Hello,
One time
friends.
it didn't.
What? Really?
One time it didn't. Anyway, hello, friends.
Anyway, hello. Exciting stories here with Janae and Lisa. Thanks for joining us for our National Library Legislative Day live stream with the HPA. My name is Janae Phillips. I'm the Director of Leadership and Education at the Harry Potter Alliance, and I'm here with my friend Lisa. Where do you work, Lisa?
Lisa works for the American Library Association. I am in the Washington, D.C. office. It's our government relations and policy shop, and my official title is Manager of Grassroots and Advocacy Outreach.
Bangin' title.
It's pretty long.
It's pretty great. You and I can have long title buddies. So Lisa is a longtime friend of the HPA. She's been our main contact at the ALA pretty much ever since we started partnering together, which has been great. So if you all are brand new to this, maybe this is the first time that you've done Accio Books with us, or maybe just the first time you're tuning in for this stuff. This is part of our annual Accio Books campaign. So the Accio Books campaign is now in its 9th year. And it's always been about kind of supporting the power of story and making sure that everyone has access to books and literacy. And that's been super successful and very cool. But for the last couple of years, we've also been partnering with the American Library Association to tackle the problem from other angles as well, right? So it's important to make sure everyone has books, but what about access to books on the regular? Across the nation and also the world, if anybody happens to be tuning in who is global. So the American Library Association is all about advocating for libraries and the importance of libraries in our communities. And so really trying to look at how we can solve that issue from multiple levels and multiple angles. And do you want to talk a little bit more about kind of what the ALA does, the scope, and this event in particular?
Sure, absolutely. So the event in particular is National Library Legislative Day, and something that we've been doing from our office for over 40 years. So we have quite a history of advocating.
I don't think I knew or remembered that number. Yeah, that's really cool.
Our office was established over 70 years ago, so we have a long history of advocating for libraries and use that libraries serve. And it's pretty exciting to be a part of that, to be honest. National Library Legislative Day is a day for us to bring a ton of library supporters, librarians, and just general library advocates both to DC. This year we have almost 500 people in the city at the moment up on the Hill advocating for libraries. So on the first day, we bring everybody in, we do advocacy training with them, we brief them on our priority issues. Our office covers a ton of different issue areas, everything from basic library funding to things like net neutrality and equitable access to broadband. We do copyright issues, we do government information and access to that government information, basically ensuring that taxpayers have access to information that they're paying for. And we do privacy and surveillance legislation. We do a little bit of everything, to be honest. But what we do at Ledge Day is pick 2 or 3 of the top issue areas and make sure that we educate our advocates on those issue areas and then send them to the Hill to talk to their members of Congress. And partially that is to give them the opportunity to get our asks out there, but it's also just to tell their story. So it's a good opportunity for them to build relationships with those members of Congress, their staff, tell a little bit about what the work is that they're doing in their home districts, and then also share with them their concerns or their support for pieces of legislation, depending on which we're talking about at the time. So we've got 3 priority asks this year. 2 of them are funding and 1 of them is broadband based. The first one is the Museum and Library Services Act. The second is just a general call for federal library funding. And the third is actually inviting our legislators into libraries to see how broadband in libraries works, because we understand that libraries are often the only place members of the community can access the internet or have access to a computer that isn't a smartphone. So we want them to be able to see how that impacts people's ability to find jobs or fill out resumes and all of that kind of stuff. So
Right. Yeah, I think that's like, that is the number one thing that like I knew before, but particularly since we started partnering with the ALA and I've been able to go to ALA conferences and talk more with you all, how much library advocacy is not just about books. And like, I think it's important for us to talk about that because we do promote it as part of Accio Books, but like libraries are really, they're kind of like our last public community center of a place where people are going for not just book knowledge, but kind of knowledge in general. Like when we talk about like the job skills, and a lot of libraries now have like maker labs and like libraries of things and like talking about access to information in general. And I just like, I think the more you think about what a cool and critical role libraries are playing in our communities, you know, I think that's a really important thing to remember.
It's absolutely true. I think the role that libraries play is a third space, you know, the place that is neither home nor work or school, you know, where we can go to be ourselves and pursue knowledge in whatever form that takes, or just to be a member of the community with your friends or hanging out with your family is really valuable. And, you know, there might be some small fees attached, you know, if your particular library has fines or needs. But a lot of librarians are actually getting rid of fines, and we're seeing a trend toward that because librarians really are all about making things accessible and making sure that, you know, there's still one free place for folks to go in their community that isn't going to track their data or otherwise make them pay for using materials that they're accessing. So
yeah, truly, you know, talking to my fellow HPA folks, the ALA crowd is definitely like our kind of people. They're definitely right there with us in making sure that, you know, accessibility is top of mind, and that it's all about serving the community. I've definitely felt that in all of the years now that I've been able to hang around with librarians. So they are some cool peeps.
Which is funny because they also think that about you guys. Every time I have a conversation about the cool work that the Harry Potter Alliance is doing and that their members are doing, folks get really excited about it. So if you guys are listening and thinking about whether or not you should talk to your librarians about what your chapter is doing, the answer is absolutely yes.
Yes.
They were probably going to want to engage with that in some way if you're not being hosted at the library. If you are hosted at the library, great job. You're already there.
Yeah. Yeah, so one thing, you know, Lisa was just explaining, people come from all across the nation to the DC offices talking to representatives. And this is kind of like I feel like it's like, you know, the second wave or like the moral support. I kind of imagine it like, I know Lisa's Lord of the Rings fan, so she'll get that. But, you know, like Gandalf shows up with like the whole separate like crowd of people. That is what I like to picture as the virtual library legislative day. So all of these representatives have been talking to these librarians and library advocates. And, you know, it's awesome to have those conversations. And now we want to show them that, like, it's not just those people, right? Like, it's not just librarians who care about libraries. It's everyone. And they're important to their constituents everywhere. So, you know, for my Harry Potter nerds out there, which I assume is all of you, this, like, you know, the Sonora's charm, it's the way that we're amplifying that message by following up with this huge burst of calls and emails and messages to these representatives, telling them how important this is. But I know that for a lot of people, making calls especially can be a little bit anxiety inducing. It's kind of this scary sounding thing when you first learn about it. If you have any questions about the process, definitely feel free to use the chat and ask us. But what we wanted to do is actually make some calls live on this live stream so that you can see exactly what it's like and how the process works. And I think it's important to know why people are always saying make calls. So what actually is the point of making a call, right? So your representative has offices where they're keeping track of how many messages they get about every particular issue. They have staffers normally who are answering the phone. So probably one of the biggest like misconceptions I hear is that people think that if they call, you know, my representative is, or one of my senators is Senator McCain, right? It's like if I call Senator McCain's office, I'm not going to talk to Senator McCain. I'm going to talk to one of his staffers. So you can be less nervous about that. And those staffers are going to ask you probably for your name and probably at least your zip code or city so that they can verify that you are in that representative's district. Because the point of the representative system, right, if you go back to your like government classes, is that they're supposed to represent their constituents. So they're wanting to make sure that they're hearing from people within their district, of the people that they're supposed to represent, and ultimately the people that vote or don't vote for them. So you want to call and you want to share that information about what you care about and why, so that your representative knows what their constituents care about, and they can hopefully listen to that feedback and then work to advocate on their constituents' behalf in the government. Calls, from everything that I have learned from Lisa and others over the last few years, seem to have some of the highest impact, because I mean, I would think part of it is that they know that that is one of the hardest things to do, right? Like that's more time intensive than, you know, maybe shooting off an email or something like that. And it shows that there really is, like, you took the time as an individual person to like call and talk to them, and you really care about that issue. Most of the time, you probably won't even talk to a person. You'll probably get a voicemail. If you do get a person, they're not going to argue with you. They're not going to like want you to like provide all of your stats and like evidence for what you're saying. They're just going to listen to your message and record it and thank you for calling them, and then it's done. It's not like a little mini debate that you have to have. If you're not able to make a call for some reason, you can definitely send an email. But Lisa, I believe, has some tips for what to do if you're emailing in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of reasons, just to build off what Janae was saying, that the phone calls are a little bit more impactful compared to sending a letter or an email, is that when you're thinking about how someone spends their time at an office, if they are picking up the phone every 10 seconds because someone is calling, you know, you don't need 100 phone calls to disrupt someone's business day. You just need 20, which is actually really attainable when you think about it. And when we've talked to people who are on the Hill, they generally tell us, you know, it only takes, you know, 5 or 10 phone calls for them to start paying attention, because they realize something is up if they start getting those phone calls. And then they'll make a note to give to their legislator, to their boss, and let them know that this is an issue that their constituents care about. The tricky part with sending letters is that those letters, especially if you're sending them to the federal office, to the DC office, is that they have to be irradiated first, which sounds really crazy, but it will eventually make it to the office that you are sending it to. But first, it will get irradiated, and it will be in a slightly worse for wear when it gets there, and it might have taken an extra 2 weeks. So if you want to be timely about it, send it to your district office. They're more likely to pay attention. So there's usually a couple of district offices in your state, and you can look up their physical addresses on your senator or representative's website. With emails in particular, like, you want to make sure that you customize them so that they're different from, say, the script that the Harry Potter Alliance is giving you, or the script that ALA is giving you. You know, we have an action center that we use to prompt our advocates as well, and we'll give them text that explains, you know, what the issue is about and why we care about it. But it's really important to make sure that you add a little bit of additional information to it to make it your own, because the algorithms will get it. And what those algorithms do is lump everything with the same head subject line and very similar paragraph structures into one giant email, similar to the way that like a system like Gmail will group your emails. And then all that your email will have accomplished is that it's a number in an inbox. But if you trick the system and give it a different subject line and change up the information, not only will you be able to share a personal story as a constituent, someone who uses the library or a member of that person's community, but you're also going to trick the algorithm system, which is ultimately like the number one goal. But when you're working on those emails, there are two things that you want to make sure that you include. You want to let maybe three. Let's go with three to be safe.
Yeah, that's a nice number.
You want to make sure that you're telling that person that you're a constituent, and you can include the zip code, particularly if you want to make sure that they're aware of who you are and where you come from. Members of Congress have receive upwards of 500 emails a day. The staffers receive probably about half that. And I don't know about you, but if I received 100 or 500 emails a day, I think I would lose everything in it. So you just want to make sure that you're telling them who you are and why it's important that they listen to you right off the bat, so that they don't just filter you out because someone from a different state emailed your rep and decided to lodge a complaint. Because they're worried the most about you as the person that they're meant to represent, as opposed to someone in someone else's district who, is not going to vote for them, does not live in their communities. The other thing you want to make sure you can include is a personal story of some kind. So let them know that you're a library user, for instance, or tell them about a time that you used the library to complete a homework assignment or do research, or you were searching for a job. You can tell them about a program where you learned a new skill and how that new skill has affected your life. Even if it's somewhere where you go to hang out during the day, to get out of the heat and hang out with your friends and do fun things, that's information that they want to know. And if you have additional statistics, that's kind of the third thing you can throw in there, letting them know how much money the library has received from this piece of legislation. The Library Services and Technology Act provides money for all states. It's kind of like the second level advocacy to do a little bit of extra research and find out exactly where that money is going, and include a little bit of those statistics. And most organizations like the Harry Potter Alliance, or we try to do the same for ALA, will pull some of that data together so that you're not just searching all over the place for it as well. So we actually do have a toolkit, and we'll circulate it after this live stream.
Yeah, I'll make sure that toolkit is linked on the hpalliance.org/library advocacy, which is also where you can find the script and kind of more general information about the event and what we're trying to do. So that will definitely be listed there. And yeah, use ALA as your resource. They have all the stuff for you.
The librarians do a lot of research, so
the librarians have you covered. Don't feel like you got to go start from scratch somewhere. Use organizations like ALA. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, and especially when you are advocating, and this is true for any time you're doing local or state advocacy too. If you're advocating on behalf of a group, so be it the librarians or another vulnerable community in your area, reach out to that group and ask if they already have those statistics, and ask what kind of help that they need. Because the chances are they're already, fighting that fight, and they know more information and can point you in the right direction right off the bat and save you a lot of time.
Right. All right. Should I make a call?
Yeah, I think that would be great. Who are you going to call today, Janae?
I think I'll call Senator Flake.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Cool. I call my representatives a lot because I live in a district where my representatives do not always necessarily work with the views that I work with. So they hear from me a lot, which is what you should do if that is also your situation. Don't let folks off the hook. So I am actually going to call my local office because that is usually more likely to get me a person and not a voicemail. And I usually on this live stream want you to see what it's like to have the conversation. But here are some pro tips for my anxious folks out there. The phone lines are always open. So if you really want to make sure you're not going to have to talk to a human, call outside of regular office hours and you'll get the voicemail. I know, it's amazing, right? So you can do that. I think if you are up to the challenge of calling during regular office hours so that you can break up those office days like Lisa was explaining, that's great. But whatever steps you can take, if you're like super nervous about it and making a call for a voicemail is the first step you can take, that's awesome, and definitely do that. But it should be office hours for them, especially because I am in Arizona, and this is their local office. So unless they're all at lunch, they should be around.
Can I add one more thing that I just thought of that might be helpful for your folks? The other thing to keep in mind is that the people that are answering their phone are probably 24 to 28 years old. You know, you're talking to staffers almost 1,000% of the time.
Almost 1,000%.
Almost 1,000%. I'm very good at math. So the thing that you want to keep in mind is that the people whose job it is to answer the phone is almost 100% of the time going to be someone who's on the younger end. Just because that's, you know, considered to be the entry level position. And those folks are the people you do want to talk to. You know, they are the ones who are going to shuffle that information into the hands of the office staff who are in charge of the issues that you want to talk about. So just, you know, be polite to them and don't walk away from that situation feeling like you're talking to someone who doesn't have the power to make the change that you're hoping for, because they absolutely do. But also, I don't want you to worry about the fact that you might be talking to the senator themselves or someone who has a lot of authority in that office necessarily. Yeah. These folks are not that much older than you.
Yeah, they're probably your peeps. All right, let's call the office. I might mute myself for just a second if they want my whole address, so don't be alarmed if you suddenly can't hear me. But let's give it a go. Hi, I'd like to leave a message for the senator. Do you want my full address or just a zip code? Okay. Great. I am calling today because I would like to support the librarians who visited Senator Flake's office either yesterday or this morning, actually. I'm aware that the president's budget proposal suggests eliminating most federal library funding, and I want to urge Senator Flake to oppose those cuts for the financial year 2019. I am a huge fan of libraries, and I think it's really important for folks like the senator to know that they're not just about books. They are about community and supporting access to information, and I've seen what a critical role our local library plays here in Tucson, and I'd really like to see him coming out as a huge advocate as libraries and really supporting them moving forward. Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye. Ta-da! Woo! We made a call. For information, they didn't need my address because I'm calling from a local number, so they could see that it was part of the district. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so she answered and was like, hello, this is Senator Flake's office. And I said, hello. I want to chat. And that was literally it. She just listened and said, thanks. Have a good day. That's all there was to it. It's kind of amazing, right? I definitely, I was super nervous about calling up until a few years ago. And the first time I did it, I was like, that's it? That's all that happens? But it is. That's literally all you have to do. Let's see here. I don't think we have any questions yet, but I just want to make sure before we continue. Oh, someone gave us applause. Thanks for that.
Aww, thanks, friends.
Yeah. So you heard that I kind of used the beginning of the script to just make sure that I had the correct verbiage for what we're advocating for down. But then I kind of went off on my own and made it personalized. here in Tucson, the Pima County Library really does play a really big role in the community. So I was kind of able to talk about that more personally. So I tend to find that, like, if you're able to go off script a little bit, it does, I feel like it makes a difference to the staffer. I would imagine, like, if I was in their shoes and I was listening to someone, like, sounding like they were all reading the same script versus talking a little bit personalized, the personalization would probably be good. And even if you kind of want to, like, write it out for yourself beforehand, like if you want to copy paste our script and edit like what you want to say personally, you can always write it down for yourself so that you still have a script to work off, but it's a little bit personalized to your own community and experience.
Absolutely. I think one of the other things that's important to make sure you mention is the specific bill number. So in this instance, the library funding, we don't have a bill number at this point. We just have a general ask that the senators and representatives continue to support federal library funding. But if you were following up with something, say, like the Museum and Library Services Act, just always the top of my mind if there's a library bill, make sure that you have a bill number to attach with it. And again, if you're working with an association like the HPA or the American Library Association, or if you're working through a script on something like fivecalls.org, they'll usually have them listed. Just make sure that you include that so the staff know how to tally that information up at the end of the day.
Right. I can call someone else if we want another example. I could put it on speakerphone, actually, which I don't know why I didn't think to do that the first time I did it, so that you can hear the staffer. Should we do one of those?
Sure. Do you want to do your rep?
Sure.
I feel like reps and senators are... I feel like I get my senators' voicemail a lot more often than I get my reps.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, my representative is Martha McSally. Yeah, let's see. That's all I have to say about Representative Martha McSally. Let's call. All right, I'm going to try to remember to put it on speaker. Sorry, y'all. There are like a lot of buttons involved in this process. A lot of like last minute muting. Can you hear that at all?
Just a little bit.
Good afternoon, Congresswoman Martha McSally's office. This is Kyle. How may I help you?
Hi, Kyle. I'd like to leave a message for the representative.
Sure. Could I get your last name?
Yes, it's Phillips, Phillips.
And first name?
Janae, Janae.
Right, and then I have phone number 5. All right, and still at the 857.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. What would you like to get to the Congresswoman?
Has Representative McSally said anything publicly about libraries and supporting library funding?
Let me check real quick. I don't recall seeing anything on that. Yeah, I don't have a current comment on that, but I could definitely get in a question or a comment for her and her staff.
Okay, great. So I'm actually calling to support librarians who visited her office. It would have been either yesterday or today as part of the National Library Legislative Day. So I am aware that the president's budget proposal suggests eliminating most federal library funding for the financial year 2019, and I would like Representative McSally to oppose those cuts for library funding. I know that she does not tend to take really large stances on things like that, but I would appreciate it if she would really take this as an opportunity to be an advocate for library funding. I know it's something that plays a really big role here in Tucson, and particularly in Ward 2 itself. Pima County Library has a really huge impact on the community. They have a lot of programs beyond just, kind of the stereotypical library access. So I'd really like to see her look into that and make it a cause that she champions.
All right, I will get that in for the Congresswoman. And I'm sorry, you said National Library Legislation Day?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right, I will get this in for the Congresswoman.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you. You too.
Bye. Ta-da!
Excellent job.
What a kind person Kyle was.
I think that's the one thing that's always really surprised me about working with members of Congress's office. Like, they're just cool people, generally speaking. You know, you might disagree with their legislation, but often they're very professional and they're kind, at least while you're on the phone with them. If you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you. Most like every customer service rep that you've ever worked with.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think that's a really important point. And, you know, as I was saying, since I live in a district where I don't tend to agree with most of the viewpoints of any of my representatives, despite that fact, and despite the fact that sometimes my calls are very frustrated and sometimes angry. No matter what I'm saying, the staffer on the other end of the line is always very kind and polite. I think in all of the probably hundreds of calls that I've made by now, I've had like one person who gave me any kind of sass, like out of all of those experiences. So it's definitely like they are there to basically be customer service in some ways for the representatives. So like they want you to have a good experience. And I do think it's important, you know, even if you're expressing frustration or anger at the representatives' choices or what they're doing or not doing, to still be kind and polite to the staffer on the other end of the phone, because that, you know, it's human nature that, you know, if you are nice to them, the more that you're going to kind of ingratiate yourself with them and what they remember about the message that you're trying to put out there, which is basically the HPA's method for everything, right? Like that's our whole idea, is that if we do activism with joy and with love, then that's going to be really effective. So just remember that too when you're making calls.
Yeah, I think one of the best stories that I've ever heard, we've got a staffer who is recent Hill staff. And in her previous job, you know, she had to answer a lot of different phone calls from constituents who were calling the office to talk to the representative that she worked for. And she told me about a time when someone called their office looking for their lost cat and asking the representative to help look for the cat or to send out groups. Oh. And so, you know, these are folks who are answering all kinds of different questions and trying to help their constituents as best that they can. And often we don't always agree with their bosses, for sure, but they are dealing with a huge number of phone calls, and they will appreciate it and be more receptive if you're kind to them. Just like any other customer service interaction that you have with someone, you know, they're going to be so much more receptive if you start with, "Hi, how are you? Thanks for listening," and not with, "Wow, you know, I really hate you guys," and you know, like that. Just it's not a good way to open a dialogue. And if you're trying to especially build a relationship with the staff at that office and really get to know them in some way or advocate with them on a regular basis, you don't want to be known as the person who calls to complain, and at least not if you're complaining in a way that's going to be
right. Yeah, it's true. And
memorable.
Like, you know, I, as somebody who calls a lot, I bring that up sometimes. So like you heard me ask if the representative had a particular stance, and that's because I know that my particular representative has a history of not coming out with stances one way or the other. She's a little bit like Aaron Burr. So when you know more personal information about that, and you know specific things about your representatives, you can kind of think about other things you can ask. I've also like had the opportunity to meet that representative and had a meeting with her. So to be honest, a lot of times I'll be like, I had a meeting with the representative in which she told me X, and this isn't living up to what was talked about in that discussion. So like that kind of thing, you know, I feel like brings a more personal stance to it. You can also do things like Lisa was saying, if you follow up on bill numbers and things, like now that I've called, you might even like, sometimes I remember their names, or I'll write down their names. So, you know, I could call in a couple weeks if she still hasn't said anything and be like, look, I talked to Kyle, and Kyle said he was writing this down. I'd like to know like why she still hasn't said something, like what other information does she need? And I think that's kind of like, you know, leveling up. Like if you get to a point where you feel really comfortable with it, you can do things like that. Like you can call back and be like, what's holding her back? Like, can I send you some information? Can I have a meeting with her? Like, can I have a meeting with one of your staffers? And the more comfortable you get with it, the more you can kind of start to push that conversation and try to kind of push that along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you have, you start to build that relationship and you do get to the point where you're offering them some more information and you personally don't have that information, it's always okay to find an authority in that area in your community who can speak to it, or reach out to the association that you're working for. So like with ALA, our Washington office is here so that the library advocates can reach out to us and say, hey, I was talking to this office and they asked me for more information and I actually don't know. Do you guys have resources? And we can help provide them for those advocates, or put one of our, send one of our staff into a meeting with that representative. And there are always going to be people like that in your organizations as well. One other thing that I did think about, if you're engaged in this kind of conversation with your representatives or their staff, and you're not sure how to get your foot in the door with them, sending them thank you cards can actually be a really good way to do that. Find something you do agree on, or a good thing that you saw them do in your community that you appreciated, and thank them. And then that will get give you the opportunity to ask maybe in the future that hey, I saw you did this thing that I liked. I've also got this other thing that I care about. Do you care about that too? It can be a nice way to open that exchange. So acknowledge the work that you see them doing. Especially if you have
rewarding positive behavior.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of really great senators and representatives out there doing great work and standing up for really important causes. So they make it easy, but all senators and representatives are likely doing at least one good thing in your community that you can find something to talk to them about. And if you're not sure, one of the I'm just gonna. But one of the other things that you can do if you're just not sure what that issue area is, check out their website. They usually have a list of all of the bills that they've co-sponsored, so you can see what their interest areas are. Maybe they've co-sponsored something about library funding and you just weren't aware of it, or they're really interested in helping senior citizens, and hey, I think everybody should help senior citizens. So like you can reach out and say thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I might suggest is actually signing up for all of their email lists. I know, so this is something that I didn't really think about until recently. I wasn't on lists for representatives that I didn't necessarily tend to agree with. But the fact of the matter is that they're still your representative, whether you want them to be or not. Right. They are your representative. They are representing you, and it's really important to follow along with what they're doing, what they're saying, what their messaging is like. So I am on the list for all of my representatives, and it gives me a really good sense of kind of what they're doing in the community. So like I know that Representative McSally does like go to a lot of senior events. She is a veteran herself, so she does a lot of work with veterans. So that's definitely something that, if I wanted to send her a thank you, probably it would be something in that vein that I would send her a thank you for, because she does do work in that area. So that can be super helpful for kind of understanding the bigger picture of like what they care about. Because I do like, I would say that I feel like the human aspect and just remembering that they're real people, like they're people with opinions and human reactions, and having something like, hey, we may not see eye to eye on this issue, but I know that you care about this, and this is how this issue matters to that thing. That's going to help them the same way that it would help any of us in understanding an issue. So I think, really trying to do the John Green thing of imagining people complexly and thinking about them as a full human and not just that particular legislation is really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, kind of jumping off of that point, the understanding, say that McSally is into helping senior citizens, then knowing that you can come back to her office at a future date and say, hey, I know you really care about senior citizens. Are you aware of these services that the library provides for senior citizens in their community? And like use that as your jumping off point.
Absolutely.
I think it can be really overwhelming to sign up for all of the newsletters and, you know, do all of the research. I am on most of my, most of the newsletters, including some of my local, and I get a ton of emails because of that. Like my local government loves email, so they send out a ton of things. And it can be overwhelming, and I got to admit that I don't read all of it. But there was a saying that our advocacy trainer yesterday at National Library Legislative Day started with, and he said, you know, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And it's a little bit of a strong statement, I think, but it's also a true one. You know, if you feel like there are discussions happening in your community and there isn't someone who's advocating for your point of view, you need to be the person at the table, or you need to be helping identify people in your community who need to be at the table and help open the door for them. And that's not necessarily something that's going to happen overnight, but those conversations happen in a vacuum sometimes where, you know, only small amounts of perspectives are being introduced, and we need to be aware of when those conversations are happening, like your local town halls, or, you know, if it's just a matter of sending an email to let your representative know that you have a different opinion.
Right.
That does matter, because they're not necessarily thinking about an issue from every side. As Janae said, I think it's really valuable to remember that it's senators and representatives are people who represent millions of other people, and they're only one person themselves, and their staff are often no larger than maybe 20 people. And they're covered between DC office and the district office too. They're split. So it's worthwhile to know that change can take a lot of time, but that is often because it just takes a lot of time to get someone to pay attention when they're overwhelmed with emails.
Yeah, that many people they're trying to balance. So we're actually over time, but I have one more thing that I want to ask Lisa about, actually. I should also mention that the HPA is nonpartisan, so please don't take any of this as for or against poor Martha McSally and Senator Flake, who we called today. These are just my personal representatives. But I did want to ask, actually, because I have gotten this question a lot during this campaign and previous campaigns. What if your senator or representative is already a big advocate for libraries? Should you call them still?
Yeah, you can absolutely call them and say, hey, I'm aware that you're a big library supporter, and I'm also aware that the president's budget suggested eliminating federal library funding. You know, I just want to let you know that I appreciate your support in the past and ask that you continue to be a strong supporter now more than ever. I think it's a good place to come to. When you as a constituent go to your members of Congress and say, I support the work that you're doing, you're giving them more reason to continue to support it.
Yeah, it's that rewarding behavior we like. And I feel like it's got to be nice too. Like, you know, I'm sure 99% of messages they get are not like, thank you for doing X thing, or like, I agree with X thing. So I bet it's a really refreshing thing to get that positive reinforcement.
And I think just being able to hear, because I think we're all very quick to jump to the phone lines when something terrible happens. But I know I've certainly had moments in my job or my life, you know, when I'm working really hard to make something happen with my family, and having one person come back and say they saw the work and they appreciated it made me much more receptive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I felt appreciated, you know, I felt appreciated. So definitely take
people.
that.
They're people.
They're human.
Treat
human
them
people.
like humans, everyone. I think that's actually like the #1 path to success.
Yeah, I know we talked a lot about the algorithm and the inbox earlier, but there are people on the other side of that inbox, and the algorithms exist because they get too many emails to function as an office.
To function as humans. They can't do it, so they have to have an algorithm.
Right. So find your way to get your story into the hands of the humans on the other side. And just don't forget that they're complex and real people along the way.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I want everyone who is watching now or who is watching later this recording to leave this call, this live stream, and go make a call. I believe in you. I believe you can do it. It's going to be fine. You got this. If you have any more questions, you can send tweets, use hashtag Accio Books, and we will see it, or send us a message on our Facebook. If you're a chapter organizer, make sure you use your liaison and CO group, and definitely go report that you have made a call or sent an email on the House Cup. There are 100 points up for grabs for every advocacy action you take, which means every single one of you can make at least 300 points for your house. So this could really change the House Cup game. Hufflepuffs.
Hufflepuffs. Hey.
Hufflepuffs. there's a lot of Hufflepuffs.
There's a lot of puff pride on this live stream.
But yeah, the House Cup is really like anybody's game with that many points on the table. Go do it, and then when you do, report back. Make a comment, send a tweet, tell us that you did it. We'd love to celebrate with you. And make sure you find all of the resources at the hpalliance.org/library advocacy. All of the links you need will be there. Lisa, thank you so much for hanging out with us for almost an hour here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right. Well, good luck, everyone. Good job in advance. And thanks for supporting libraries. Bye.
Bye.